All right, guys, so we're just going to do sort of like a follow the leader. If everybody wants to just follow behind me. We're going to start off with a little bit of a light run around the mat. Let's go facing inside, shuffle. Facing outside. Two in, two out. Do an arm skip. Jumping jacks. Sprawl. Go down on your hips, guys, not on your knees. Richie, just go to the other side. Other side, Richie. Start your line on the other side, yeah. Speed it up. Next one, guys, it's kind of like a human ladder. Stephan's going to walk through my legs, or jog through, and then he's going to position himself. So just run straight through. There you go. Knees up, let's go for speed. Don't cross your feet, straight through. First drill, technical stand up, arms in front, you're going to break fall. Post, stand up, shuffle back. Post, stand up, shuffle back. Partner's going to turtle, the other partner's going to do a 2-foot jump over and turtle. So you're in partners, guys, all the way down. Let's go 2 lines.
Two at a time. Oh, you and me, man. Okay, I'm sorry.
on your butt. Dig your heels into the floor. Post your hand. You're gonna pull yourself through. Shift your weight to the other side. Pull yourself through. Imagine you're doing an arm drag all the way down. Pull your butt to your heels. Guys, for this one, you're gonna do a partner drill. Hook your feet, active toes behind your partner's knees. Partner on top, don't bend your knees, okay? You gotta keep them strong. Which name? Surge. Take one giant step back with one leg. Just one leg. Okay, so you're gonna extend your hip out, pull your whole body in. Other leg goes all the way back. Pull your body in. Okay, so this is forward shrimping using your hooks. So partner on top, please cooperate. Okay, all the way down, guys. The larger the step, the better it is for your partner on the bottom. Please make a firm step. Don't collapse your posture. Nice, guys. Make sure you base yourself out so you don't fall. Butt to your heel, guys. Butt to your heel. Don't use your elbow to your shoulder. Yeah, there you go. Nice.
This is kind of a two-part question. With the guillotine, the number one problem that I have is that when I slap it on, people grab my hands. And I don't know if that's born from my setup being flawed, or if that's just indicative of the technique itself. Just like an armbar, you do an armbar, people will grab their hands in defense, and there's ways to mitigate that when you're doing an armbar. Is there a way to mitigate that when you're doing a guillotine choke?
Can I see you set it up on somebody?
Yeah, Blair, can I break your neck? That's okay? Yeah, all right? Everybody's just like, yes, I would like to choke out all of you. But generally, it's just from butterfly guard, and what I do is I just grab the person's neck, almost always. I just kind of throw them, like I just kind of snap them forward. I just get this,
Okay.
right? And then what I do is I just fall back, get one hook out, and then do my very best to tap the person out. So that's generally how I do it, generally. But
Where on the back of the neck are you grabbing?
just at the base of the base of the scalp or the
So,
crown.
do you want me to use you or do you want me to use somebody else?
It doesn't matter. I like to feel it as well.
Sure, so why don't I use you first?
Sure. Thanks, buddy.
So, there's a couple ways you can set up a guillotine. The way that I've been using most now is the way that Marcel has taught me. And I actually don't like to apply the guillotine from the butterfly guard, being that I'm generally a lot shorter and smaller than my partners. So if I'm here and Richie's head is up there, I have to do a lot of work to grab and tuck under, right? So a lot of the times when I'm setting up, I'm going to try and set up for more of a standing position, and I'm also going to use my head, my chest on top of Richie's head to help post it down. So a lot of the times I'll push my partner into more of a defensive or a guard position, and when I go to set it up, I'll grab the back of the head. But the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I have a little bit of a fist, and I'm going to make sure that the blade of my wrist is going to rake under his chin as I pull him here. So I'm not coming deep, I'm actually coming right here. Okay?
That's interesting.
So when I come here, the blade of my wrist attacks his neck, the top of my chest puts his head down, my other hand wraps around my fingers just like this. And then from here, I'm gonna lift my elbow over the shoulder, and I'm gonna go to finish. So I'm using my body as an extra place for leverage. The other way that I like to set it up is if you're actually sitting. Sometimes people play this open seated guard, or they get into this butterfly position, and I'll hand fight with them, and I'll do this. So if I don't get the guillotine, I start getting a guard pass. So I set it up that way as well. I think in terms of the way that you're setting it up, you're probably reaching a little bit too deep, and because of the angle that their body is, they're able to generally pop out of it.
Right. That happens a lot too.
Because my first instinct when you come here is that I'm going to start resisting you. So
Right.
It's telegraphic. I'm already reading it. So you either have to explode in with this head jerk and drop it. Yeah. And instead of driving it so deep, right, try to use your chest to help keep my head down. So.
Right. And even I know what you're saying, because even from this position, it's tough for me to elevate my chest over top of your cervical spine. I almost need to. It feels right away that I need to sit up.
And also look at your hand position. You're coming in at me like this. You're scooping your hand.
Really, I've always thought that this was the way to do it.
There's different ways that you can do it. This is the way that I prefer, just because your blade is the blade of your wrist is a lot sharper, so it's a good point of attack.
And you just do this.
Because look, if I come in like this, right, it's soft. Different from if I come in like this.
Yeah, that sucks.
Okay. The other thing is, I used to train with Henzo Gracie's team, and they do the arm end guillotine.
Sure.
Right? So that
Yeah,
one you
John
can have,
Dennehy does it,
that
yeah.
one you can have a deeper grip because the head's going all the way inside and you're pulling up like this.
Right.
So stylistically, it kind of depends on what you're doing. But if you are going to shoot in for a guillotine here, I suggest that this is probably not so good because your wrist is naturally going to bend. It's going to make it a softer attack.
Right. Okay. So can I say that on Blur, the very first setup from kneeling?
So from here, basically, you want me to stand up and set it up?
Was that how you did it? Yes.
Like I said, I don't like to set it up from here because I'm too small. Like
Right.
for me to get his head, I have to really explore that, right?
So generally, would you say that the guillotine works when your head is higher than their head?
It shouldn't be so far above you. You know what I mean? Like if I'm gonna do it on somebody like Suana, is it? Suana. She's much more closer to my size, right? So somebody this size, it's a lot easier for me to, I'm sorry if that's wrong.
I'm so sorry. It won't happen again. It won't happen again. I still love you.
So like she's much closer to my stature. So if she's sitting in front of me, I can grab this and come here. But you give me somebody that's a little bit bigger, you're on your knees. Even from here, look at how much further I have to go in order to get my point of attack, right?
Sure.
So I would suggest you look at your entry based on who you're fighting, and if you have to sit up a lot more, maybe you should stand up and attack as opposed to sit and attack, because you're giving them a lot of leeway to pop their head up and to stop the attack.
Okay, so just to go over the process once again, it's control the neck and then elevate your chest over top, simultaneously putting your hand underneath their jaw.
Trap their neck, or trap the back of their head, but you have to come in with your other wrist at the same time. So trap it at the same time. Don't pull their head into your armpit.
Right, can I see that? I just want a visual.
So the difference is from going here and saying, give me your head for the attack, versus
Oh, that's different.
right? It's a much faster attack, right? The amount of time it takes for me to do this, his hands are going to start defending, right? But if I'm here and I stop him here, my hand gets there before his hand does. And then I pop over, trap, and finish.
Could you show the finish in its entirety, please?
Yeah. So I'm here, the blade of my wrist comes in, the top of my hand comes over my four fingers, I'm going to lift my elbow over his shoulder, and then from here, I'm just kind of clamping my elbow down, and that's going to go ahead and tighten on the front of the neck. So it's not so much of a side neck choke, it's going to be more right on the trachea.
That thud sound that we're hearing, is that your fist on his trachea, or is it on the sternum? Like, are you actually going sternum and then going up?
I can do it to you.
Yeah, give it to Richie.
Yeah.
All for the benefit of greater knowledge. Okay, let's.
But you see how that it's like a very fast reaction, right?
Right.
Your partner is going to be stunned that you actually did that in the first place. They're
Yeah,
not-
more than stunned.
Yeah.
More like
But that's a stunned feeling, whereas
Right.
from here, right?
yeah, that's more passive. I can feel how it's.
And your hands are down here. If I go like this really fast, you don't have time to think, right? So you have to think about the timing of your attacks as well. Not just the timing in which you're applying them, but the timing in which your partner has to defend something, right? You want to apply pressure as soon as possible.
Cool. So can we all try that?
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
guys would like to. Maybe I'll just break that down for people so that they can do it, because there's more of an answer question section. So guys, I guess for the ease of application, just to try it out, if you're shorter than your partner, sit up a little bit. Back of the hand's going to be on the hand's going to be on the back of the head. You're going to pull your partner's head down, and as you're doing that, you need to come in with your fist right underneath their chin. Okay, so don't pull, then apply. You're going to do it at the same time. Use the top of your chest to push down on their head. You're not looping it inside your armpit. Okay, pressure on the top of the head, and then your other hand's going to wrap around. 4 fingers on top, guys. Once you lock it, you're looking to swing your elbow over their shoulder, and then clamp down on it to finish. Okay, guys?
Yeah, so the head actually doesn't come up through the armpit, eh?
Not in this one. Again, there's like 20 million different ways you can do the guillotine, and I've learned a lot of them, but this is the style I'm using right now because it's a good attack.
Yeah, it's unbelievably beautiful.
Yeah, and like I said, from a passing position, if you're here and you're able to come in, you hand fight, you get it, right?
That's awesome.
So let's try that, guys, for a few minutes. So think about your plant here, right?
Well, yeah, but my next
Make sure his head doesn't go down by your waist. Again, not in the armpit. Yeah, I see he even taps from there. All right, guys, time. Let's bring it in. So, like I said, I'm really sorry that we don't have more time to develop parts of these games because we're sort of just giving you snapshots of things. But I'll do a little bit of shameless promo here. You can buy the DVD that we filmed, or you can also visit my teacher's website, MG in Action, which is absolutely phenomenal. I've adopted a lot of principles from Marcella's game, and if you like some of the stuff that's happening here, it's wonderful. Please check it out. I just want to explain a final note with that move. I was talking to one of the students here. This isn't necessarily a move that's like, here's a sweep for you to do, or here's a great takedown. This is a transitional moment. And for those of you that are like watching elite level jiu-jitsu, more and more jiu-jitsu is becoming efficient, and it's about taking those moments in between the sweep, in between the submission, in between the takedown, and paying attention to how you're utilizing the space and the time. So that entry is really, you could go anywhere with it, but it's the idea of taking dead weight and pushing it somewhere before you're able to execute something. So you're setting all your moves up. So that's really important. So pay attention to that when you're training, that jiu-jitsu is not so much about, I know 10 sweeps and I know 5 submissions. It's about, I know 10 sweeps, I know 5 submissions, and I know a little bit in between too, all right?
The next question I have for Emily is one that's based on the back position, and it's from grip fighting from the back. And Stephan, can I borrow you to articulate the question? If I have your back, this here, generally it's a fight for controlling of the hands, perhaps trap the hands, and then possibly control a lapel or go directly for a rear naked choke. Now, once we have this grip, and Stephan, can we just switch this up so that you take my back, just so I can talk about the escape that I'm finding problematic? So, I'm Stephan, right? Stephan's me, right? And he'll have my hands like this. And sometimes, can you take this hand as well, please, Stephan? Yeah, he has this. But however, what's happening is this escape where, because he has my hands, he has no control of my upper body. And then this squirming action is happening where the person's not able to go down because of the hooks, but the person's able to go up and the hands are being extended. So I don't know if that's just born from having a purchase with the upper body control, or if, eliminating control of the hands, but just going directly for the seat belts, or...
Yeah, okay, so can I have you on your butt?
Sure.
Right here. So I learned how to take the back from here, I learned how to take the back from here, all this kind of stuff, right? Marcelo always talks about using the seat belt, and there's a really good reason why you should always use the seat belt, because your partner really can't unbuckle you unless you start making the moves, right? The problem with your entry before, Richie, is that, valid technique here to be using the grips and the sleeves and holding on to secure your partner, but you're not really doing anything to secure the top of their shoulder, or if you're like this, it's not strong enough of an anchor to keep your partner down.
Right.
Very different from this.
Right. So this should be the default, always.
This is always the default. Whenever I fight from the back, this is always the default. The thing about the seatbelt grip too, a lot of you guys may learn to just hold the back and you hold with your fingers clasped like this or like this. There's a lot of different ways that we hold it. Seatbelt is always bottom hand on top. There's a big reason for this. If I'm holding like this or I'm holding like this, look at where Richie starts to defend. He's going to defend my attacking arm. So if I go bottom hand on top and he starts to defend, he starts to defend against the arm that's not attacking, right? Because it's this hand, most of the time people are going to defend this hand, and then the arm is still free. If he decides to go ahead and attack this arm, that's fine. I'm going to peel the grip, he's going to be attacking, right? From here, I might pull his head back and sink it in a little bit deeper, and then look to finish the choke. But the key here is that with the seatbelt grip or any grip, you want to make sure that you're making use of everything, like your grips, your setup, everything matters. If you fumble your grip and you come here, you're going to have to recover from that. So always practice the seatbelt. You want to keep your chest on your partner's back. That never changes. But the other thing about seatbelt too is I don't want to have my head here. I want to stay really tight. I'm like a pack on his back, right? And then when I look to attack, the most basic way that I'll set up a choke, like a bow and arrow choke that I really like, from here, I'll look to open up the lapel. So even if Richie starts defending this hand, I can still get my fingers around his lapel, right? I'm going to open it up just a little bit. This is a detail that I show on the DVD. I turn the collar in, and I'm going to go with my thumb inside and wrap my 4 fingers behind his lapel. I'm not just wrapping here, okay? So I'm going really deep. The fat part of the lapel should be facing the palm of your hand. Okay, and then from here, if Richie still continues to defend, that's fine. I'll let him defend because I want him to go to his side. He doesn't really have too much room to move. We're going to go to the side. And even if he has his 4 fingers inside my wrist, this grip is generally so deep that you're going to finish it. But the grip is really vital here, guys. It's not your general, I'm just going to grab the lapel and go for a sliding collar choke. I can't tell you how many times I come here and I'm like, I can't finish the choke, or you're just pulling and raking at your partner's neck. So just take the time here to turn the collar in, fat part on the palm of your hand, wrap behind, and then look to finish. It's much tighter, okay? It keeps your wrist straight.
But the transition, you do have to let go of the seatbelt at some point in time in order to do that. At some point in time,
I do have to let go of the seatbelt, right? But the way in which I'm letting go of the seatbelt is that I've baited you to start attacking an arm that doesn't really matter yet, right?
Right.
Because this arm, if you would peel this arm off, look, I still have this deep, right? Then I can peel this open and start to attack. If I'm trapping you like this or like this, I haven't trapped your shoulder so you can slide up, and I'm giving you a lot of space to move. You can, if I hold you like this, you can move side to side. There's also the escape where you trap your elbows really close to your rib cage, right? And then I can't do anything with my hands.
Right.
So you want to keep your hands free, right? And with this, at least one of your arms will always be free.
Because you're protecting it with your palm.
I'm protecting it, right? I'm here. And even if you, so let's say you attack the other arm, right?
This one.
Yeah.
That's fine, yeah, it's irrelevant.
You see? I can peel this off. You can come here and trap it, right? So the idea is sort of being very strategic about how you're setting your hands up.
So
it matters.
is there a time where you do want to control the wrists? Is there a time, like, would you just say, like, seatbelt always, until...
I mean, there's times here where one of my favorite, you really get jacked up kind of moves is I'll be here. When you go to defend, I'm going to trap the arms here.
Well, that's cool.
Okay? This is like parallel train tracks, you're not crossing your arms over. But from here, what's really nice is when we're on our backs, I'm gonna dump one hand and trap it, and then I can go 2 on 1.
Parallel train tracks, meaning that my
You see how I've crossed your arms over, but they're not crossed over in an X pattern. Like, you see how we're making a clear
they're
path?
parallel. So
Yeah.
you never want me to do this.
No.
You're not forcing me to do this.
I don't want to be like this. Okay? So top hand grabs the top, bottom grabs the bottom, and I'm going to force the hand down, 2 on 1. Okay? You could get into the grip fighting that Marcelo teaches is pretty amazing. It's a little bit confusing to just show in like 5 minutes.
Right,
But
and you're doing that because your arm controls my shoulder, whereas the way I was doing it before, can I borrow your back, Stephan? Please? You're saying that when I was doing it this way, here, this shoulder was bare.
Yeah, you're
and
not-
that's how you
you're
move.
not controlling
So you're
your
saying,
body.
I get it. So here, my arm is trapping his shoulder. And this is the reason why it works. This is the reason why
well,
it's crossed.
in this position, you're in more of a straight jacket, right?
That's brilliant.
You've got him in a straight jacket. And let's say Stephan tries to bridge.
Right.
Take his bottom hand, Richie, dump, yes.
Oh,
And now
that's
you
awesome.
tack 2
Now
on.
I can switch. Oh, okay, I get it.
You
So
understand?
this shoulder is trapped then.
Well, you have to think
That's
about what
brilliant.
you're defending. You don't want so the principle of defending the back is get your back to the mat. You can't let your partner have the space to get their back to the mat. You have to defend that first. So if you have a seatbelt grip, or you have a really tight grip where you're not giving them any room, then you have a lot more room to play around with your hands, right? Once you let go of that control, once you lose notion of the fact that, oh, their back is starting to slide off my chest, that's where you're going to lose the position.
That's great. Now, is there a specific process to get this? That's cool as hell. Is there a specific process to get that?
It's a matter of how your partner defends your arm attack, right? So when you go seatbelt and they go to put their hands on
Can
top
you see
of your...
that? I'm looking. So you have seatbelt.
So you go seatbelt, and it's right here. As soon as I start seeing your attack...
Oh, I see. You're actually intercepting my hand.
Yeah. So again, it's a transitional moment, right?
Right.
And let's say I just come here. And
Right.
you
And
don't
of course,
get there
I'm
fast
gonna
enough.
defend this hand.
Yeah,
Right.
but if you don't get there fast enough, I'm just going to take the grip.
Right. I see. I see. So grabbing my hand is really only born on a consequence. If you can grab my lapel, go for the lapel. But if I'm defending, then pummel and control my wrist. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is with advanced jiu-jitsu, you have to think about efficiency of movement. You can't, because you learned how to defend the back or to attack the back in 5 moves, that doesn't mean you have to attack in 5 moves. It means that you should look to finish it as quickly as possible. So start eliminating the steps in between. When people ask me, well, what's so great about training with Marcelo, or what's that like? And I'm like, I've never trained with anybody that moves with so much efficiency. Like, I swear to you, if you learn how to do a butterfly sweep in 5 movements before, he teaches it to you in 2. And I think that's why you see elite level jiu-jitsu getting so much better, because they're trimming the fat off the steak, you know what I mean? So just because you learn something a certain way, don't necessarily stick to every single movement if it's slowing you down, right? You gotta think about what's important. And what's important when you're attacking the back is that you maintain control of the back and that you look for the right openings. Not that you grab the lapel here and that you have this wrist and, don't get caught up in all that. You gotta stick to the principles.
Right. So Emily, what's a systematic process to train that train tracks grip that you're talking about? What's a systematic way for everybody in the room to?
I think before you even think about training those grips, you have to train the seatbelt, right? Again, it's about sticking to the principle of the movement. I say this a lot to people. I've been to schools where I see that the students have excellent submissions, but they have terrible guard passing, terrible sweeps. They don't know how to do anything in between. So don't start over here when you don't know what's going on here. So just for now, I would suggest train the seatbelt, learn how to apply the seatbelt from turtle, from the mount, from every position, and then worry about how you're going to start hand fighting. Because if you can't maintain a proper seatbelt grip, you can't maintain any other grips. Right? So what we're going to do, guys, is I want you guys to really understand this principle of the seatbelt, okay? So when you're sitting with your partner, one person's going to come around behind, and the first thing I want you guys to just practice is being able to maintain a tight grip, keeping your head in close to your partner and not letting them scramble away from you, okay? If you feel comfortable with this, and by all means, if you just feel like you want to get close and you want to understand this better, just stick to that. But if you're really insistent on doing something else, when your partner begins to come in and defend, your bottom hand is going to go and intercept their grips, right? You're gonna think about intercepting their grips. And from here, you're gonna be able to pull their arms a little bit tighter, okay? I'd like to stop it there, Richie, because there's so many different transitions you can get into that I think for the level of the people here, we should stick to that.
Okay.
Okay?
Cool.
All right, let's try that, guys. I was explaining it to Richie. I think it's really important when you're learning technique, especially if you like to study DVDs or books, or even your teacher might explain things through steps. And I went through a period where I learned things like, guys, step 1, left hand goes out. Step 2, right hand comes in. There's a lot of reasons why that's a wonderful way to learn. And when I'm teaching beginners, I like to teach like that because I want them to understand all the basic principles of a movement. However, when I start teaching intermediate to advanced students, I drop a lot of the steps and I teach through verbalization because for intermediate to advanced, speed and timing is really important. And if you break things down too much, you start performing it like that. So when you look for the technique, you go, okay, the head is there, step 1, step 2, and then you lost it because it was too slow. So just think about how you're learning something. If you're attempting a new movement and you're not certain of how it should be applied, try it in a step form. And then as you get better at it, start taking the steps away and verbalizing it for yourself so then you don't miss out.
Cool. The next question I have is butterfly guard. And sometimes when we're fighting from butterfly guard, Steph, can I borrow you for this to help articulate the question? Can we go from your butterfly guard, I'll be standing? Sometimes a lot of people will just circle a lot. Like they'll circle this way or they'll circle this way. And I was just wondering if there's an immediate answer, aside from just pointing your knees so that you're square to them, is there an answer so that way if there's a counterattack from when the person is trying to circle around your butterfly guard?
Yeah, so how should I answer this? Let me sit in a butterfly and let me have you stand.
Sure.
When you're in a butterfly guard, you're not just moving linearly, but you also have side to side, and you also have your body, right? You can be spinning. So what I really try to do here is I try to make use of my hooks. So if you start running around me, as opposed to just letting you run, I'm going to start looking to catch something, right? I have to catch something in order to stop you because you don't want to engage with me. That's the mentality that the person on top has,
I'm trying to evade you.
Yeah, you're just trying to run around. So the person on the bottom, you have to do the work. So if somebody does this, I'll come here.
So you dive.
I just dive. You got to do the butt scoop. You got to come around the side, right? Or if they step a little bit deeper, I trap, and then I tuck under, right? So I'll get into a different scenario, but I make use of my feet here because my feet are the closest point of contact to you. My hands really aren't going to do so much.
Right.
And if you're not hand fighting with me because you're not trying to penetrate, but you're just trying to run around me,
far away.
you're too far away. I have to close the distance because you're not going to come close the distance.
Right.
So you should practice moving side to side, coming in.
Wow. That's great.
The idiot sweep, right?
We call it something else in the
Yeah, but the knee push or whatever you want to call it, utilize your hooks because it's going to be the closest point of contact. So when your partner's running around you gotta close the distance. It's like when you're fighting MMA, right? Like if somebody just wants to stand here and like hold their hands up, what are you gonna do? Somebody has to throw the first punch.
Sure.
So you have defensive fighters and offensive fighters.
Right.
For us, you're more powerful too. Think about like it's like a punch, right? You're jabbing.
Right.
When you do this, it's like a break fall. Guys, just 2 notes. Richie just asked a question, and I think it's important because I'm watching a lot of you guys do the exact same thing. Richie asked, why knuckles, not palms, okay? It's kind of like break falling versus a jab. When you break fall, you're looking to release momentum into the mat, right? So that's why we lay our hands flat so that all of our energy goes into the mat. When you're punching or you're jabbing, it's a loaded fist. So that same thing goes for when you're scooting. If you roll off your hands, the momentum stops in the mat, and then you have to generate it again. Okay, it seems like a really small detail, but it matters. And the other thing too is physically, like you have to roll over your fingers. So it's kind of like you're doing this as opposed to making an impact on the mat. The other thing that I'm seeing guys do, you want to make your hooks as close to their feet as possible. You don't want to bring your hooks up behind their knees, okay? Once your hooks come further up their legs, they're going to be able to base themselves because their knees will bend. So trip them at their feet and then push on their knees so you're locking their legs out. All right, guys, go.
So you're gonna bring your hips in. Yes. So hips in. Feet up. So let's do it again. So and hips in. Feet up. So and then hands on my knees.
Yeah.
Alright, time guys, let's bring it in.
So the next question. Yeah. So the next question I have for Emily is from the butterfly guard sweep. And Blair, can I borrow you for this, please? Whenever I'm doing a butterfly guard sweep, sometimes I don't know if it's born from my execution of it, or perhaps it's just born from a very savvy practitioner who's trying to cancel it out. Can I just grab an underhook, please, Blair? So I'm trying to do it. What happens is, Blair, I want you to throw your weight over to this far side by the bathroom. So he's crushing my weight down, and not so much passing. Allow me to keep my hook. Here, he's crushing my hook like this. Here, can we do that again, please? So, I'm finding that when I'm doing this, I'm sweeping, but I get trapped like this.
Okay.
He's throwing his weight to the far side, and then I still have one hook, hopefully, right? But I don't know if it's born from, thanks, Blair. I don't know if it's born from my execution of it. Perhaps there's not enough vertical lift, or if he's just really good at killing that particular sweep. And I just need to basically prepare with a contingency plan.
Can I feel you do to me?
Certainly.
Alright, so I think it's a pretty solid butterfly sweep.
Okay.
I think what it is, you know, when you start training with people for a certain period of time, people start getting used to your game,
Right.
right? So think about using some modifications to that sweep, and there's tons of them. Did you see any of the ones that we filmed this weekend?
Gripping variations.
Okay,
with
so
power.
one of my favorite, so I'll show you two things that I like to do from this position. I set up everything from here, right? One of the things that I'll do is when my first butterfly sweep fails, the next thing I'll do is I'll take out the hand that's the underarm grip here, and I'm gonna switch it to Richie's head. And then from here, I'm gonna finish the sweep. Using the head control really works and it sets your partner off guard, okay? If it's more of a question that they're posting their leg out, right? So you're here and then they're trying to jump, look,
One leg extra.
I'll set it up, right? If I don't get the full single and they just post their leg out, at the very least, I'll grab the knee, right? This hook is still active. It's important that you don't let your partner collapse both hooks. Once Richie's hip traps my knee.
So this was really my concern, because this is what's happening. So I don't know if it's just me lacking the mindfulness to keep my knee up
Yeah.
and vertical,
Yeah.
or if it's so is that the answer to the question? Is just that I just really need to be more pronounced with my knee position?
Well, I think it's if you continually do a certain move to certain people, they're going to get used to it and they're going to think of ways to get around it. So you have to evolve your game. So part of that is that you have to be prepared with some sort of a counter. If you feel like they're going to collapse your hip, keep your hook active. Don't worry about trying to finish the sweep. Keep your hook active here, because at least from here you can use your foot to post up and get back underneath them. Now I'm not flat, right? The other way, if I was very, this is an important lesson. Don't overcommit to certain movements, right? I learned this a long time ago in competition. I had a friend, I don't know, do you remember Rima?
Yeah.
Rima and I started training jiu-jitsu at the same time, but we had very different competition styles. I was way more like methodical, very slow and kind of grinding. She was super aggressive and explosive. But what would happen is, if she was super aggressive and explosive and overcommitted to one movement, she would often get reversed, turned over, and that's how she'd end up losing a fight. So when you're executing movements, don't fight the resistance. Like if you hit a wall, don't force it, because chances are your partner has some sort of a counter for it. Have another move in place, right? From that butterfly sweep, do you have one or two counters to if you get blocked?
Almost always what I do is I just wind up in half guard and just start fighting. Like I eject the
Okay,
one
so
hook.
don't take a passive position. So you went from a butterfly guard, which is like a whole guard, to a half guard, right? So your partner kind of started to advance the position. Don't let them do that. Keep the game in your court, right? So think about at an advanced level, right? People have an answer for everything, and it's about applying a lot of pressure on your partner to force them to make a mistake. You don't want to let your partner force you to make a mistake. So think about 2 or 3 counters that you would like to use that fit your game, so that when you try and go for that sweep, it's a good sweep for you, but if it fails, you can't just let your legs go flat.
So what was that transitionary move that you did when you kept your knee up, and then you dragged it back in the center? If I can see that, Stephan, can we borrow for this?
So for this one, right, I just went from a butterfly, he resists, and he posts his leg out, right? So when he posts his leg out, I have a lot of space here to dive under. So my hook has to stay very active on the inside of his thigh, and then I'm gonna dive deep. Okay, so from here I'm in a totally different scenario. I've put Stephan off base again, right? The other option you have, if you want to start learning how to play like an X guard or a single leg X guard, is if your partner posts their knee, I always look for this. I grab the knee, my hook again is active, and then I'm going to roll back and kick my leg up. It's an awkward feeling for your partner on top to feel like they're being launched from the inside of their thigh, right? Like, they're just like, what? And they go for a ride. Because your partner on top, most of the time, they're thinking about going forward and grinding into you or flattening you out. So if you do the reverse and you keep that hook active and you throw them up in the air, that's a momentum that they're not expecting.
So just to summarize, the vertical hook is the one that's most important. Like this one, that's the critical one. Is that what you're saying? And that's the one that's going to allow you to transition.
Every hook is critical. What you need to keep in mind is you cannot let your opponent collapse your game. If you are so insistent on that butterfly sweep and they fold your knees over, you no longer have the leverage to execute anything. You have to go into a defensive mode. So what you need to do is keep your outside hook active. You need to be active.
Right.
Do you understand?
Absolutely. Is there a way to really isolate that? Is there a drill to keep this from falling to the side?
A lot of that just has to do with intention, right? Like you have to keep the intention in mind. I cannot let my knees get folded over. If you want to practice, somebody doing like a folding knee pass or something like that, you can do that. But you can't really train the mind physically by saying, okay, I'm going to not let my partner fold my legs over. You always have to just keep in mind, I have to stay active. I have to stay active.
Right.
It's kind of like being insistent on the underhook. I have to get the underhook or I'm going to lose the position. I have to get the underhook. You just have to mentally commit to it. So with the butterfly guard, think about it. The principle of the butterfly guard is you utilize this open guard. You have a lot of spring and explosiveness here, right? But what happens if somebody takes that away? How is that going to be taken away? When your legs are straight, when they're too flat on the mat, or when they're pinned together. So you can't let those things happen.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely cannot. Otherwise your game is gone.
Right. So the 1-2 punch that we're doing here, that is the butterfly into the X guard. Pardon me, the one-legged X guard. Is that what we did? The partial entry to the?
Yeah, you can either do a modified head control butterfly sweep, or you can go into the single leg X guard, or you pop your partner up.
Let's do the pop the partner up. That looks.
Okay.
Can we see that again?
Yeah. So for this one, guys, you're going to start with your partner in a butterfly position. Your partner can leave their knee on the mat, or they can lift their knee. If they lift their knee, you can either dive under, or you just pull on the top of their pant leg. Important thing here is that you have to frame out your inside hook. Keep it hard. And what I mean by that is don't go like this, okay? That's collapsing your frame. You gotta keep it strong. And think about it as a seat that you're gonna take your partner for a ride on. When I'm doing this, watch how my butt scoots underneath Richie. Okay? And I'm looking to make him stand up. From here, I can go to single leg X guard. I can come out here, sweep, all sorts of different ways. But I've just made a lot of space for myself. Okay?
Can we see that with Stephan?
Yeah.
Please.
So in here, right, I want to grab the outside of my partner's pant leg. You get ready to butt scoot as I pull my partner over me. Okay? Let's try that, guys.
Cool.
That we're playing around with the hand fighting, and you were getting to this point where you were like, okay, great, I really like this train tracks thing.
Some of us like it more than others.
Emily.
Some people are obsessed with it.
Obsessed. Such a harsh word.
I just want to say, look, when you toss the bottom arm down and you trap this, you can utilize the 2-on-1 grip here. This is really good. When you go 2-on-1, if you're trapping the outside arm, you can use this to open up the lapel to feed it for your attack. The other option you have, if you really want to mess your partner up, is open up the lapel, get your other hand in there, right? And then when your partner starts to squirm around, dump the other hand. And then the train tracks right off, right?
That's awesome.
So there's something else. But you want to...
Cool. What we'll do is we're just going to open up the floor for questions for Emily, so anybody can just jump in and ask some questions. Stephan's got a question.
Earlier you showed X-guard and single leg X-guard. Single leg X-guard looks a lot like your basic leg locking position for ankle locks and heel hooks. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship to how leg locks and single leg X-guard go together, being small, in particular in your game, being a smaller, lighter person, and in general?
Okay, so I don't do a lot of leg locks. I've never learned a lot of leg locks, and that could possibly be because I've trained a lot of gi. I used to train no gi by default. Whenever there was no gi, I'd just be like, okay, whatever, I'll just roll around on the ground. So I'm not too familiar with leg locks, but I do know that whenever I pull single leg X guard on anybody in competition, the commentators are always like, oh, look at Emily's, she's really attacking for this leg lock entry, and that's not at all what I'm trying to do. I like using the single leg X guard and the X guard because as a smaller person, it allows me to get underneath my partner really well and to isolate parts of their body. So with the single leg, I can isolate one entire side and I can think about how I'm trying to shift their balance. If I'm having trouble executing the sweep from the single, then I'll go to the double or the regular X guard, in which case they get stuck in between my hooks, and more often than not, they're going to topple over. So I use their size to my advantage by trying to basically bait and shift their weight. In terms of, are you vulnerable to leg locks? Absolutely, you're vulnerable to everything. I think it's important to try and build up awareness, if you can, about what you should and shouldn't be doing. But I also get lectured at with my instructor. He says, well, for himself, he doesn't really spend a lot of time looking at other people's games and how he's going to defend it, because his mentality is, I'm going to enforce my game first. So if I'm going to enforce my game, I'm not going to have to worry about your game. Not all of us are that talented, but it's a great concept, when you think about being able to get to the position first. And if there's anything that I've really taken to heart the last couple of years, it's this idea of fighting and always being the one to apply the pressure first to force your partner to make the mistake. So a lot of my game, my guard game has changed a lot because it's been about making quick transitions to confuse your partner, unbalance your partner, and force them to, eventually give you something.
You know how when you're doing the gripping from behind and which is grabbing your arm and leg, I find a lot of guys, even if I'm doing a seatbelt, a lot of guys will just kind of basically force my arms out straight and then just while they're giggling, turn around and toss them over. It doesn't matter if I'm getting a seatbelt or not. It's just they're basically just He-Man.
So they're just basically forcing, using strength to force things out. When they're doing that, do you even have a lapel grip, or you don't have anything?
Well, I would have the lapel grip, and a lot of times they'll just get ripped out of my
Okay, so the detail that I showed today with this grip, try that entry, because I actually legitimately finished bigger people with that. It doesn't matter if they sort of strip my other hand away, as long as I can keep this arm in deep and I keep my elbow tucked in, you can usually get a really clear attack right across their neck. This folded collar grip is so deep and it's so tight that even if a bigger guy falls over to his side or throws you off the side, as long as you're able to maintain that angle, it's a really good finish, right? Realistically, you're gonna get manhandled for the rest of your life in jiu-jitsu. That's just the way it's gonna be. And your training partners should learn to adjust to some degree to help you learn. But when you're dealing with strength, you have to look at the inevitable. And if you're gonna get stripped away, you gotta save your position, right? So if you need to really abandon something, let it go. But if you really feel like you have a firm grip, keep it, because it's a good grip and you might be able to actually finish your partner, okay? But if you feel like they're just really tossing you and you're not able to do anything, then just let it go, stay on top, transition to something else, okay?
We worked on the single leg X-guard entry, sweep, for example, sweeping to the right, doing it on the right leg. Do you do any entries where you're sweeping to the right and you do it on the left leg?
Where I'm sweeping to the right, but I'm doing the single leg to the left leg?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm gonna hold the single, I do hold the single leg on both sides. I just have different entries for each side. Is that what you mean?
What I'm wondering and would it be easier just to demonstrate, or do you?
Yeah. So are you basically asking me what would I do to my left side?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Why don't you come up? So for my left side, this is what I like to do, primarily because when I get into this position, a lot of the times I'll force my partner to stand up, right? I'm not gonna let them get in. When people stand up and pass, most of the time, oh, so you're giving me the same leg again.
Okay.
Oh, okay, okay.
Would you like me to do it on the other side?
Yeah, so why don't you stand up, because otherwise I'll just attack that leg. So when somebody looks to start to pass from this position and they feed me this leg, if I'm here, I'm gonna block it, right? And then the thing that I really like to do is I'll come in tight here and I block you from being able to apply pressure, right? Because I'm in tight. From here, I'm gonna swing under and attack it on this side.
Do you ever run into the problem, and that's beautiful, thank you. Do you ever run into the problem with them trying to squeeze their legs in tight while your legs through? Say you've tried the ankle entry, and for whatever
they
reason,
lock
they're
their
just-
ankles?
they're just really trying to.
Yeah,
keep
so if they lock their ankles together, so let's see, on here.
They're just really trying to force them.
Okay, so from here I'm actually mounted.
Yeah.
Okay, so from here you're gonna lock your ankles together, right? Is this what you're asking about?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, so if somebody locks you down from this position and you're trying to get into a butterfly or a single leg, there's two things that I'm either gonna do. If I have the ability to turn the leg that's sandwiched in here, if I have the ability to plant my foot on the mat, I'm gonna do this, okay? So now I have my foot planted on the mat and my knee is on my partner's butt. It's like a seat. My other hand is gonna come around and grab their knee, and look, my hook is still inside. So again, even though he's trying to pass my guard and collapse my position, my intention is, you're not gonna collapse my position, I'm gonna get back underneath you. So I keep my hook active, I keep my foot planted, I use this to lift, okay? So I'm here, I wanna come here, so my partner's already jolted forward, and I'm gonna lift. Right? Once I bring you off the ground, if you don't base your feet on the ground, you know something bad's gonna happen.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll do is, depending on the angle I'm at, sometimes if the person has a really good low, close guard pass, I'll frame, I'll get my hip out. Again, my hook is still active. I get my hook out and I pull my knee back out and I come up to an open seated guard again, and then I'll start my entry over. So it kind of depends on how your partner's trying to kill your game, but again, the intention of keeping at least one of your hooks open is important, and then using the floor if you can to base and get up underneath. So whenever you're playing like a single or a regular X guard, the idea is utilizing the space underneath your partner's hip. So anytime you have the ability to get under, use that explosiveness and swing right in.
I like to do the Ezekiel a lot, and I find that sometimes, a lot of times, the fingers get really gapped. Is there like something that I can do with some unique way of?
How do you hold the Ezekiel?
Just like that.
Yeah. So depending on the type of person I'm doing the Ezekiel to, like I would never try and do the Ezekiel choke to someone like you, because you're so much bigger than me.
Yeah.
Somebody closer to my size, I'll always just go 4 fingers in, right? And when I go 4 fingers in, I try to grab as much of my gi as possible to make it very tight. So I'm not just leaving my fingers here or my fingertips.
Yeah.
I try to drive it as deep as I can, and then I actually hook my own gi, right? The other thing I'll do is from here, as opposed to just swinging the blade of my hand around, I'll actually make a fist, and I'll punch the side of their neck. And it works. So, actually, so I'm here, right? I want to try and get this as deep as possible. And here's another thing. Stephan's head, I don't want to just like leave it here, right? So if I can, I'm going to drop my head and drive it away so that opens up his neck. So don't just let your partner hang out, right? Drive their head using your own head. When it's open, take the fist, drive it in, and then finish. The takeaway is that your head is another appendage.
Yeah.
Don't forget about it, right? So if you're finding that your grips are just not enough, it's probably because your partner's defending with their whole body. So drop your head and think about trying to nudge the head over. Get more of an opening on the neck so that you can get a clear entry for the submission.
It definitely makes sense, because usually I'm kind of like this, right?
Yeah. A lot of people, when they do the Ezekiel, they do this, right?
Yeah.
They lift their heads, drop the head, and try and make a bigger opening for yourself.
Cool.
Anybody else?
Well, presumably at Marcelo's, people are playing a lot of X guard. Do you have a favorite X guard pass?
Yeah, well, so the thing that we always talk about there is don't let yourself get there, okay? So don't let yourself get to the position where your partner's got a deep X guard on you. So my favorite pass is the standing step pass. It's something that he commonly uses, and I go over it a bit. And the idea there is you don't want to wait until your partner gets both of their hooks underneath you. So you got to move previous to that. So it's I guess I can show it on Stephan if you want. So from here, when my partner looks to maybe start trying to look for an entry, I'll push them down and I'll come here, right? So the idea of this pass is to kick up and over and through to the side. I'm avoiding his hooks completely, right? If Stephan manages to get an X guard on me, and this is gonna be interesting because I'm so little, one of the things that I will try to do is, I generally have a pretty good base. I do a lot of like, wheelbarrows and crawls and stuff to keep my base down. So as my partner's maybe trying to stretch me out, I'm thinking about, I don't want to topple over, right? Stephan's basically using his legs here to fold me out as much as possible. So if I have the ability to fold down his front toes, from here, I can either look to pop back or pop forward, okay? But either way, if I pop, let's say I'm able to grab the top of his feet, right? From here, Stephan's gonna get probably a little bit aggressive with this opposite hook because I've taken the other one away. So if I can, I'm gonna trap and sit back. Once I've taken his X guard away, I'm gonna try and capture his hip. So the idea is, don't wait until your partner's completely unbalanced you in X guard. Think about what's giving you the problem. And what's giving you the problem is that your partner's trying to spread you out, so take something away. Take the hooks away.
I have one question that I'm asking.
Back to the train track.
The train track. If you're the folding pass, you talked about that on, I think on the Thursday as well when you were here. So from the folding pass, is there a counter to it? If somebody does have your knees to the one side, is there a way to get yourself out of that?
So folding pass is like kind of, I call it the oh fuck move because when you get your knees pushed over to completely to one side, it's pretty tough. Like you're 90% chance it's not good. If you want to come over. So if I get you, sorry, why don't you come over here? So if Richie gets me here, he's trapped my hip, right? So depending on how he's dropping his weight on me, I have to think about my hooks here. So right now, the way Richie's dropped his weight on me, he's dropped on my hip, not so much on my thigh. So as a result, my feet are still light and movable. So what I would do from here is I would turn and pull my hook in so that his reaction is, oh no, she's gonna try and do something. He'll probably try and move around, at which point I've now taken your leg back, okay? Difference is, if you lie and sprawl on my thigh, now I don't really have the angle to pull that, right? So from here, if I have the ability to, I'll frame out on his shoulder and try and push him back. My bottom leg, I'm gonna try and come underneath and hook his hip. I don't know how many of you guys can see that. So, he's got me flattened out here, right? He's applying pressure on my thigh, so I'm gonna frame out on his shoulder, and my leg here, I'm gonna try and hook it on his hip. And then from here, I'm gonna try and basically shrink myself away, make him move, center back up, and come back. All right? But you don't wanna let your knees get totally bound up and pinned. If they are, look for an opening with your legs. Because a lot of times when people hold you down, the place in which they're putting all of their pressure is not always the right place. So if you can catch them before they really settle in, that's what you want to do, right? So again, it's that idea of don't let your partner get to the worst possible scenario if you can help it. When you feel it coming, when you know, like once your knees have gone over and you're like, oh man, and they're starting to sprawl, that's when you want to center yourself back up or make use of your hooks.
Okay, everybody, I just want to go and say thanks to Emily for coming down and putting together a fantastic workshop for all of us. I know that I got a lot out of it. I'm hoping that everybody else got a lot out of it as well. I'd also like to thank Stephan for organizing and putting together this workshop. Thanks, everybody.